The maid got stuck in the elevator with her millionaire boss. The ending is shocking. The clanking of elevator doors echoed through the empty lobby of Mitchell Technologies as Scarlett Hayes entered with her cleaning cart. It was 11:45 p.m. and the storm brewing outside transformed Chicago into an almost apocalyptic scenario. The thunder made the windows of the imposing 60-story building shake, creating dancing shadows across the polished marble floor. Scarlett adjusted the contract employee badge on her navy blue uniform and consulted her to-do list. The 58th floor, where the presidency was located, would be his first stop. She knew the building would be practically empty at this hour, except for the security guards on the ground floor and the occasional straggler workaholic. What she didn't expect was to find Avery Mitchell still in her corporate penthouse. The CEO of Mitchell Technologies was known for his ruthlessness in business and for turning a garage startup into a tech empire worth billions of dollars in just a decade. At 35, he was the terror of competitors and the nightmare of employees who didn't meet their impossible goals. When the elevator doors opened on the 58th floor, Scarlett found Mitchell himself poring over documents on his glass desk. He didn't even look up when she timidly entered the office. "Sorry, Mr. Mitchell, I can come back later," Scarlett offered, her voice betraying the nervousness she felt. "Do your job," he replied dryly, still not looking at her. "Just try not to make any noise." Scarlett began her routine in silence, but her mind was far from there. In a few hours, she would have to be ready for her constitutional law class at Northwestern University. Working as a night cleaner, she managed to keep her grades up and pay her astronomical law school fees. Particularly loud clap of thunder made the lights flicker, and for the first time Avery Mitchell looked up from his documents. His gaze met Scarlett's for a brief moment, and she noticed something other than the usual coldness in his blue-gray eyes. Concern. "You should go home," he said, surprising her. "This storm is getting worse." "I still have 3 more floors to clean," Scarlett replied, trying to maintain a professional tone. Before Mitchell could respond, the lights flickered again, and this time they went completely out. The emergency generator should have come online immediately, but something was wrong. Darkness remained. "This shouldn't happen," Mitchell muttered, standing up abruptly. "The backup system is foolproof." Scarlett took out her cell phone to use as a flashlight, but there was no signal. "My phone is dead," she reported. "Mine too," Mitchell replied, his voice now thick with tension. "Let's use the stairs." They headed for the office door, but before they could reach it, a deafening metallic sound reverberated through the building, followed by a tremor that sent them reeling. "This isn't normal," Scarlett whispered, her heart racing. "To the emergency elevator," Mitchell ordered, taking her arm. "It's the only one with an independent system." They managed to reach the emergency elevator, which was still working with its dim lighting. The doors closed, and for a moment it seemed like they would escape the situation. Then another impact shook the building and the elevator came to a screeching halt between floors. "This can't be happening." Mitchell repeatedly pressed the emergency button, but nothing happened. Scarlett watched the elevator panel carefully. His years of working multiple jobs to support himself have given him practical knowledge that many would underestimate. The emergency system was supposed to be independent, but it appears to have been deliberately disabled. Mitchell looked at her with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "How do you know that?" "I've worked in maintenance long enough to recognize when something isn't just a glitch," she replied, holding his gaze. "And you said the system was foolproof, unless someone wanted it to fail." Mitchell added, his expression hardening. "But why?" A heavy silence fell between them as the implications of that conclusion set in. Scarlett watched Mitchell take off his jacket and loosen his tie, his rigid CEO stance giving way to something more human, more vulnerable. "How long until they realize something is wrong?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "Security checks in every 2 hours, Mitchell replied, checking his wristwatch. "But with this storm, communications compromised and the security system apparently sabotaged. We could be stuck here for hours," Scarlett concluded, sliding down to sit on the floor of the elevator. Mitchell watched her for a moment before doing the same, keeping a respectful distance. "You're not just a cleaning lady, are you? And you're not just the ruthless CEO everyone thinks you are." She shot back, surprising herself with her boldness. A small smile tugged at the corner of Mitchell's lips, the first Scarlett had ever seen. On his face, "I think we have a lot of time to figure out who we really are," he said, his tone changing to something softer. Outside, the storm continued to batter Chicago, but inside that elevator something began to change. The masks they both wore, he as the ruthless CEO, she as the simple cleaning lady, were beginning to crack, revealing the complex people behind them. And as the hours stretched out before them, neither of them could imagine how that night would change their lives forever. It was after midnight, and the silence in the elevator was interrupted only by the howl of the wind that filtered through the cracks in the building. Scarlett watched as Avery Mitchell removed his Patek Philippe watch and twirled it nervously. Between his fingers, a gesture that humanized the man she knew only through newspaper headlines and hallway gossip. So law student Mitchell broke the silence, surprising her. "How did you find that out? Your constitutional law textbook fell out of your locker in the staff locker room last week," he explained, a gleam of genuine interest in his eyes. "I admit, I was intrigued. It's not common to find cleaning ladies who go to Northwestern." Scarlett felt her defenses rise. "And it's not common to find CEOs who pay attention to cleaning staff." "I pay attention to everything," Mitchell replied, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "especially after the latest events at the company." "What developments?" Scarlett asked, her professional curiosity kicking in. Mitchell hesitated, studying her intently before continuing. "In recent weeks, confidential information about our new artificial intelligence project began to leak. At first, we thought it was common industrial espionage, but—" he trailed off as if he had said too much. "But now you think it's an internal thing," Scarlett added, her years of law firm internships sharpening her instinct. "And this system failure no longer seems so accidental." A particularly loud clap of thunder made the emergency lights flash, and for a moment their faces were close in the dim light. Scarlett noticed a barely noticeable scar near Mitchell's temple, a mark that business magazine photographs never showed. "You're more perceptive than you let on," Mitchell commented, adjusting his position. "What else have you observed working here?" Scarlett considered her answer. The last few weeks cleaning the Mitchell Technologies offices had given him a unique insight into the company. "I've noticed that the head of security, Marcus Sullivan, has been holding late meetings with non-employees, and his executive assistant, Lauren Peterson, is always staying up late typing documents that never make it into the regular shredder." Mitchell's eyes narrowed. "Continue." "Last week I found scraps of paper in Sullivan's trash can that weren't completely destroyed. There were mentions of Project Aurora and coordinates that—" "You're not supposed to know about the Aurora," Mitchell interrupted her sharply, standing up. "It's a top-secret project." "Well, maybe you guys should be more careful with the trash," Scarlett countered, also standing up. "And maybe they should pay more attention to people they consider invisible." The tension between them was palpable. Mitchell studied her as if seeing her for the first time, reevaluating every assumption he had made about her. "Why are you telling me this now?" he asked, his voice softer. "Because we're stuck in an elevator during a storm after a failure that you yourself said was impossible," Scarlett replied. "And because I have a really bad feeling about all this." As if to confirm their suspicions, a metallic sound echoed above them, followed by a worrying creak. Mitchell instinctively moved closer to her. "The elevator cable," he muttered. "Someone is tampering with the mechanical system." Scarlett felt her heart speed up. "Does that mean—" "It means we're not stuck here by accident," Mitchell added, his face inches from hers. "And whoever planned this knows exactly where we are." The elevator shook slightly, and the emergency lights flashed again. Scarlett noticed that Mitchell had placed a protective arm in front of him, an unconscious gesture that revealed more about him than all his previous words. "If this is an attempt at sabotage," Scarlett whispered, "why not just attack directly? Why all this elaboration?" "Because it's not just about me or the Aurora project," Mitchell replied, his voice tense. "It's about something bigger, something I recently discovered that could destroy not just the company, but lives. At that moment, a muffled sound of footsteps echoed through the elevator duct. Someone was moving around on the upper floors. "Mr. Mitchell," Scarlett said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think we need to have a very serious conversation about exactly what's going on at your company." Mitchell stared at her for a long time before nodding. "You're right. But first, we need to survive tonight." The storm continued its violent symphony outside, but inside that elevator, two people that fate had brought together in an unlikely way began to realize that their lives were more intertwined than they could have imagined. And as the secrets of Mitchell Technologies threatened to come to light, Scarlett and Avery discovered that their social differences were the least of the problems they would have to face in the coming hours. The metallic grinding above them intensified, and Scarlett felt her heart quicken as Mitchell pulled her closer to the elevator wall. His last words about surviving the night were still echoing in his mind when a dull thud on the ceiling of the elevator made them freeze. "What exactly is Project Aurora?" Scarlett whispered, her back pressed against the cold wall. "And why would someone risk so much to sabotage it?" Mitchell ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that betrayed his anxiety. "It's an advanced neural recognition technology. It can map brain patterns and translate thoughts into digital commands." "My God," Scarlett murmured, understanding the implications. "This could revolutionize medicine, but in the wrong hands." "Exactly," Mitchell added. "I discovered that some people within the company were planning to sell the technology to a private military organization. The potential for misuse is catastrophic." Another impact, this time closer, made the elevator rock. Mitchell checked his watch. 1:15 a.m. The storm continued to batter Chicago, but now it seemed like the least of its problems. "Last week," Scarlett began, her legal mind connecting the dots, "I saw Lauren Peterson handing a flash drive to a man in the parking lot. I thought it was routine, but she seemed nervous." "Lauren," Mitchell frowned. "She's worked with me for 8 years. I would trust her with my life." "Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who can hurt us the deepest," Scarlett replied softly, remembering her own experiences. Mitchell's gaze met hers in the dim light. For a moment, the ruthless CEO's mask fell completely, revealing a man carrying the weight of betrayal and responsibility. "Why did you choose right?" he asked suddenly, surprising her with the change of subject. Scarlett hesitated, but something about the vulnerability of the moment made her answer honestly. "My father was wrongfully arrested when I was 12. He spent 3 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit. When he was finally proven innocent, something inside him had broken irreparably." Mitchell watched her intensely. "And you decided to fight for justice?" "I decided that no one should have to go through what my family went through," she confirmed. "Every hour cleaning offices, every night of sleep lost studying. It's all worth it if I can make a difference." A sound of metal being manipulated above them interrupted the moment. Mitchell quickly took off his jacket and handed it to Scarlett. "Put this on," he whispered. "If someone can open the elevator roof, I need you to look like a businesswoman, not a cleaner." "Why?" she asked, even as she slid her arms into the sleeves of her expensive jacket. "Because if I'm right about who's behind this, they won't hesitate to eliminate witnesses. But they might think twice before attacking anyone who seems important." The smell of Mitchell's expensive cologne enveloped her, and Scarlett felt an inexplicable wave of protection emanating from him. It was surreal how in just a few hours their lives had become so complexly intertwined. "There's something you're not telling me," she observed, studying his tense expression. Mitchell hesitated, then took a small device from his pants pocket. "This contains all the evidence of the conspiracy, including encrypted emails and suspicious bank transfers. That's why they're here tonight. They knew I'd find out everything tomorrow morning." "Like you." "Because I programmed the system to automatically release all files at 9 a.m., he explained. "It was my guarantee in case something happened to me." Scarlett took the device, her hands shaking slightly. "Why are you telling me this? Why do you trust me?" "Because you remind me of who I was before I became this," he gestured to himself. someone who believed in making a difference, not just profits and power. The sound of footsteps above them grew closer, and now they could hear muffled voices. Mitchell moved instinctively, positioning himself between Scarlett and the elevator ceiling. "If anything happens to me," he whispered quickly, "go to Federal Prosecutor Alexandra Winters. She's been quietly investigating the company for months. But be careful. We don't know how far this conspiracy goes." Scarlett felt her heart race as a ceiling panel began to move. The storm outside roared with renewed force as if sensing imminent danger. "Avery," she whispered, using his first name for the first time. "Why do I have a feeling tonight is going to change our lives forever?" He looked into her eyes, a sad smile playing on his lips. "Because it's already changed, Scarlett. It's already changed." The ceiling panel moved another few inches, and the beam of a flashlight cut through the darkness of the elevator. Mitchell and Scarlett remained still, their hearts beating in unison, as they waited to find out whether the next few moments would bring rescue or danger. The night was far from over, and the secrets of Mitchell Technologies were just beginning to come to light. The beam of light that penetrated the elevator ceiling revealed a face that made Mitchell instantly stiffen. Marcus Sullivan, the head of security, watched them with a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Mitchell," Sullivan greeted with mock cordiality. "What an inconvenient situation, isn't it?" Two other men dressed in maintenance uniforms but carrying postures that betrayed military training flanked Sullivan. Mitchell kept Scarlett partially shielded behind him, praying that her jacket and poor lighting were enough to mask her true identity. Marcus Mitchell replied, his voice controlled. "I suppose it's no coincidence that you're here right now." "Always perceptive," Sullivan laughed humorlessly. "That's why you're where you are. Well, you almost are. You know Project Aurora is worth a lot more in the right hands than you know." Scarlett felt the device Mitchell had given her weigh like lead in her jacket pocket. His mind worked frantically, years of studying criminal law giving him frightening clarity about his situation. The right hands being a private paramilitary organization, Mitchell teased, clearly trying to keep the attention on himself. "How much are they paying Marcus enough to make up for all the lives that will be destroyed?" Sullivan gestured, and the two men began to open the ceiling panel further. "Don't be dramatic, Avery. It's just business. The world is changing, and whoever controls the mind controls the future. What about Lauren?" Mitchell asked, his voice betraying a note of hurt. "Is she involved in this too?" "Lauren was persuaded to cooperate," Sullivan replied with a sinister smile. "It's surprising how a few compromising photos can convince someone to do the right thing." Scarlett felt Mitchell tense beside her. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the elevator the tension was even more palpable than the electrified night air. "What about your date?" Sullivan directed the beam of light at Scarlett. "I didn't know you started mixing business with pleasure, Avery." "She's a legal consultant," Mitchell replied without hesitation. "We were reviewing contracts when all this happened." Sullivan narrowed his eyes, studying Scarlett more closely. She stood tall, silently grateful for her years of law firm internships that taught her how to project confidence, even as her insides trembled. "Well, that complicates things a bit." Sullivan sighed theatrically. "But accidents happen, don't they? Especially on stormy nights like this." The elevator shook violently, and Scarlett realized with horror that it wasn't just due to the storm. Someone was manipulating the guy wires. "You're not going to get away with this, Marcus," Mitchell stepped forward. "The system will automatically release all evidence within a few hours." "Oh, about that," Sullivan smiled. "Let's just say that the little electromagnetic pulse bomb we installed didn't just affect the emergency systems. When the power comes back on, all of Mitchell Technologies' servers will have been wiped." Scarlett felt her heart speed up. The device in his pocket was the only remaining evidence of the conspiracy, the only chance to prevent a revolutionary technology from falling into the wrong hands. "Why are you telling us all this?" she asked, her voice firmer than she expected. Sullivan looked at her with renewed interest. "Because in a few minutes this elevator is going to suffer a catastrophic failure, a terrible tragedy indeed." The workaholic CEO and his companion victims of a terrible accident during a historic storm. Mitchell moved imperceptibly, positioning himself for action. Scarlett realized he was calculating his chances against the three men. "You know what's ironic?" Mitchell said, stalling for time. "You've always been so loyal, Marcus. Even Lauren I can understand under blackmail. But you... What happened to the man who saved my life in that shooting 5 years ago?" Something darkened in Sullivan's gaze. That man realized that loyalty doesn't pay the bills. Not when his own son is dying from a rare disease, and insurance refuses to cover the experimental treatment. The revelation hung heavy in the confined air of the elevator. Scarlett saw. The exact moment realization hit Mitchell, his expression softening for an instant. "Marcus, I could have helped," he said softly. "Why didn't you come and talk to me?" "Because you've become just like everyone else, Avery," Sullivan exploded. "So busy building your empire that you forgot about the people who helped you get there. How much is a human life worth to you now? How much is my son's life worth?" The elevator shook again, more violently. This time, one of the men whispered something in Sullivan's ear, and Sullivan checked his watch. "Well, show time," he announced, pulling out a gun. "Don't worry, it will be quick. Consider it mercy, Avery." At that moment, all the emergency lights went out, completely plunging the elevator into complete darkness. The chaos that ensued was instantaneous sounds of fighting, muffled screams, and the deafening blast of a gun. Scarlett felt a hand grab her wrist and pull her towards the corner of the elevator. Her heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to explode. "Stay low," Mitchell's voice whispered in her ear, and she felt the heat of his body close to hers, protecting her. The darkness was absolute, but the night was far from over. And as the fate of Project Aurora hung by a thread, Scarlett realized that her life had changed irrevocably the moment she stepped into that elevator. The absolute darkness in the elevator was broken only by the occasional flash of lightning that penetrated through the cracks, creating ghostly flashes that revealed fragments of the unfolding fight. Scarlett felt Mitchell move beside her, his controlled breathing betraying years of training she had never imagined he possessed. A groan of pain echoed above them, followed by the sound of a body falling. The smell of gunpowder still hung in the confined air as the emergency lights dimly flickered back to life. The scene that unfolded made Scarlett catch her breath. Sullivan was down, clutching his bloody shoulder, while his two accomplices had disappeared through the opening in the ceiling. "Did you really think I wouldn't be prepared, Marcus?" Mitchell said, maintaining a defensive stance. 15 years of martial arts and tactical training was not just a hobby. Sullivan laughed bitterly, pressing down on the wound. "Always the man prepared for anything, aren't you, Avery? Except for betrayal from those closest to you. Like Lauren." Scarlett interjected, her legal mind connecting more pieces of the puzzle. "But she's not the only one, is she?" Mitchell cast a questioning look at Scarlett, who continued. "Last week, while cleaning the board office, I overheard a conversation between Lauren and Richard Bennett, her CFO. They mentioned something about contingencies and offshore guarantees." Richard Mitchell's voice was filled with disbelief. "He's been my best friend since college." "People change, Avery." Sullivan coughed, a crooked smile on his pale lips. "Especially when there are billions at stake." The elevator shook again, more violently this time. Mitchell quickly checked the control panel, his face tense. "The cables are giving way," he announced. "We have minutes at most." "Your friends upstairs planned it all," Scarlett concluded. "The storm was just the perfect cover for a tragically convenient accident." Sullivan let out a weak laugh. "You guys still don't get it, do you? This is much bigger than Mitchell Technologies. Project Aurora is just the tip of the iceberg." "What are you talking about?" Mitchell demanded, approaching the former head of security. "Why do you think private military organizations would be interested in neural recognition technology?" Sullivan teased. "Think bigger, Avery. Think government's intelligence agencies' population control." A deafening crash interrupted Sullivan's revelation. The elevator shook violently, and Scarlett lost her balance, being supported by Mitchell. "We need to get out of here," he declared, quickly analyzing his options. "The ventilation duct in the ceiling is our only chance." "What about him?" Scarlett asked, looking at Sullivan, who looked increasingly pale. Mitchell hesitated for a moment. We can't leave him here to die. Always the hero, Sullivan muttered. That's why they want you out of the way, Avery. You still have principles in a world that no longer values them. Working together, Mitchell and Scarlett helped Sullivan to his feet. The wound on his shoulder was bleeding profusely, but it did not appear fatal. Why are you helping us now? Scarlett asked, as Mitchell improvised a safe passage through the elevator ceiling. Because my son died 3 months ago, Sullivan replied, his voice cracking. The experimental treatment they promised me, it was a lie. They just wanted to manipulate me and I... He choked on the words. Mitchell stopped what he was doing, staring at his former friend. Why didn't you tell me, Marcus? I could have. Because pride is a curse, Sullivan added. And because by the time you realize you've been used, sometimes it's too late to take it back. Another jolt of the elevator reminded them of the urgency of the situation. Mitchell helped Scarlett up first, silently admiring her agility and strength, as she hoisted herself to the ceiling. The device, he whispered when she was safe. Still with you. Scarlett nodded, feeling the weight of the small object in the pocket of his jacket that he was still wearing. At that moment, another thought struck her. Prosecutor Winters, she said suddenly. You mentioned her before. How did you know I would meet her? A small smile appeared on Mitchell's lips. Because I did my homework. You're not just a law student, you're the best student in your year. And you're interning at the office that's cooperating with the federal investigation. You knew who I was from the beginning? Scarlett realized, feeling a mixture of admiration and irritation. Not exactly, Mitchell replied, helping Sullivan up. But when I first saw you, something told me you would be important. I just didn't realize how much. The elevator made a distressing metallic sound, and part of the support cables snapped. Mitchell quickly hoisted himself to the ceiling just in time to prevent the floor beneath his feet from partially giving way. We have to move, he ordered. The ventilation shaft will take us to the 56th floor. From there we can. From there you'll find more trouble. Sullivan interrupted, his voice weak but urgent. Richard has a team stationed at each emergency exit. And Lauren, she has orders to eliminate any evidence, including people. Scarlett felt the weight of responsibility for the device in her pocket increase. It wasn't just proof of corporate conspiracy. It was potentially the key to stopping something much more sinister. Then let's do something they don't expect. She declared, an idea forming in her mind. We'll use your invisibility against them. Mitchell looked at her curiously, beginning to understand her plan. Outside, the storm continued its violent symphony, but inside the Mitchell Technologies building, a new battle was about to begin, one where appearances could be deceiving, and where a simple night-cleaning lady could be the key to unlocking a conspiracy far bigger than either of them imagined. Scarlett's plan was as audacious as it was dangerous. As they moved silently through the ventilation shaft, she explained her idea in broken whispers. Cleaning staff have access to all areas of the building without arousing suspicion, she explained. And there's a uniform storage room on the 54th floor. Mitchell, who was right behind her in the tight space, processed the information quickly. You want us to disguise ourselves as the cleaning crew? Exactly. Richard and his team are looking for a CEO and a sockled legal consultant, not night cleaners. Sullivan, who was dragging himself with difficulty due to his injured shoulder, let out a low laugh. It's brilliant in its simplicity. People always ignore those they consider beneath them. They reached a junction in the ventilation system. Scarlett consulted her memory of the building's blueprints, which she knew from her cleaning routines. To the left, she indicated. There is an exit that leads directly to the cleaning materials storeroom. As they moved, Mitchell reflected on how drastically his life had changed in the last few hours. The woman he had initially seen as just another cleaning worker was now leading his escape, demonstrating an intelligence and courage that genuinely impressed him. When this is over, he whispered, you're going to have to explain to me how a Northwestern law student knows the systems of a corporate building so well. 3 years of working different shifts to pay for college teaches you a lot, she replied, an audible smile in her voice. Besides, I've always been curious. Each building has its own stories, its own secrets. They reached the ventilation grill that gave access to the storeroom. Scarlett removed it with precision, demonstrating a familiarity that came from practice. The space was dark, lit only by the emergency light, but she moved confidently between the shelves. "Here," she said, handing clean uniforms to Mitchell and Sullivan. "Get dressed quickly. The longer we wait, the better chance you have of finding us." As they changed clothes, Sullivan let out a pained groan. The wound continued to bleed, although less intensely. "I won't be able to get very far," he admitted. "You guys need to go on without me." "No," Mitchell said firmly. "We have already lost too many people to this conspiracy." Scarlett searched the shelves and found a first aid kit. With efficient movements, he improvised a better bandage for Sullivan. "Why are you helping us?" Sullivan asked her as she worked. "You could have just remained anonymous. Let them think you were just an executive in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Because some things are bigger than ourselves," she replied, finishing the bandage. "And because I learned from my father that remaining silent in the face of injustice makes us complicit in it." Mitchell observed the interaction, noticing how Scarlett managed to remain calm even in such a tense situation. It was the kind of presence of mind that couldn't be taught. It came from experience, from resilience built through hardship. "Is the device still secure?" he asked quietly. Scarlett nodded, indicating the inside pocket of her uniform, where she had transferred it. "But we need a plan to exit the building." Sullivan said all exits are guarded. "Not all of them." Sullivan interjected, his voice stronger after the impromptu treatment. "There's an emergency exit underground through the maintenance tunnel. It was part of Plan B in case something went wrong." "And why should we trust you now?" Mitchell questioned, although his tone was more curiosity than accusation. "Because I lost everything because of this conspiracy," Sullivan replied, meeting his former boss's gaze. "My son, my integrity, your trust. The only thing I can do now is try to repair some of the damage I caused." A distant sound of doors opening made everyone freeze. Voices approached from the corridor. "Cleaning cart," Scarlett whispered urgently, pulling one of the equipped carts closer. "Sullivan, lie down in the lower compartment. Mitchell, get the mop. Act natural." The voices got closer, and now they could make out words. "Search each floor," Lauren Peterson's voice ordered. "They have to be somewhere in this building." Mitchell and Scarlett exchanged glances. In a matter of seconds, they would have to play their roles perfectly, or everything would be lost. But there was something different now, in the look they shared. A mutual trust forged through danger and understanding that went beyond their apparent social differences. "Ready," Mitchell whispered, his hands tight on the mop handle. "Always," Scarlett replied, adjusting her employee badge with renewed confidence. The storage room door began to open, and with it, the next act of their unlikely escape was about to begin. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the Mitchell Technologies building a new storm was brewing, one that threatened to expose long-buried truths and forever change the fates of everyone involved. Lauren Peterson turned the corner of the hallway just as Scarlett was pushing the cleaning cart with Mitchell at her side. The meeting was inevitable. Lauren stopped abruptly, her high heels clicking on the marble floor as two armed men flanked her. "Keep looking," she ordered the men, her eyes studying the would-be cleaners with measured attention. "You two standing there." Scarlett kept her head down, her heart hammering against her chest as she continued pushing the cart. Mitchell, meanwhile, pretended to clean a non-existent stain on the floor with methodical determination. "Identification," Lauren demanded, approaching Scarlett. With deliberately slow movements, Scarlett showed her legitimate cleaning employee badge. Lauren examined it, her shrewd eyes searching for any sign of forgery. "What about you?" She turned to Mitchell. "New hire," he replied in a convincing Hispanic accent, keeping his eyes on the floor. "First week." Lauren narrowed her eyes, and for a terrifying moment Scarlett feared that all was lost. Below them in the cart's compartment, Sullivan lay motionless, probably as tense as they were. The security system registered suspicious movement on the upper floors, Lauren commented casually, studying her perfectly manicured nails. "Did you guys see anything unusual?" "Just the storm, ma'am," Scarlett replied. allowing her natural Midwestern accent to shine through. The thunder is making the whole building shake. Lauren moved closer, invading Scarlett's personal space. The executive assistant's expensive perfume couldn't completely mask the scent of fear emanating from her. "You know what's funny, Lauren?" said her voice low and dangerous. "I've always prided myself on knowing every employee in this building. It's part of my job. But you—" She paused dramatically. "You seem familiar in a different way." Mitchell tensed beside them, his hand gripping the mop handle hard enough to make his knuckles whiten. Scarlett kept her expression neutral, years of diverse jobs giving her the ability to remain calm under pressure. "Maybe from the laundry area," Scarlett suggested meekly. "I've been working here for a few months." "No, it's not that," Lauren insisted, her piercing eyes fixed on Scarlett. "You remind me of someone I saw earlier today. Someone important." The sound of hurried footsteps interrupted the interrogation. Richard Bennett appeared in the hallway, his expensive suit rumpled and his normally composed expression replaced by a mask of frustration. "Lauren," he called. "We found blood in the emergency elevator. They couldn't have gone far." Lauren hesitated, her gaze switching between Scarlett and the direction Richard's voice had come from. It was the moment Mitchell chose to act. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, still maintaining his accent. "We have 3 more floors to clear before dawn." "Go," Lauren waved dismissively, already turning to find Richard. "But if you see anything suspicious, report it to security immediately." Scarlett and Mitchell continued down the hallway, keeping a steady pace that didn't betray their desperation to escape. Only when they turned the corner and entered the service elevator did they allow their masks to slip momentarily. "That was close," Mitchell whispered, helping Sullivan out of the cart compartment. "Lauren was always observant," Sullivan commented, his face pale with pain. "That's why they chose her for her role in this conspiracy." "What role exactly?" Scarlett asked as she pressed the underground button. "She's more than an executive assistant," Sullivan explained, leaning back against the elevator wall. "Lauren is the bridge between Mitchell Technologies and the organization that wants Project Aurora. She has connections you don't even know." Mitchell processed the information with a grim expression. "That's why she always insisted on participating in all strategic meetings. It wasn't just professional efficiency." "And Richard?" Scarlett asked. "How does he fit into all this?" "Richard Bennett is the financial architect," Sullivan revealed. "He created a complex network of shell companies to funnel project funds. When the technology is sold, billions will be laundered through these companies." The elevator descended silently each floor, bringing them closer to both possible freedom and increasing danger. Scarlett could feel the weight of the device in her pocket as a constant reminder of what was at stake. The maintenance tunnel. Mitchell changed the subject, his survival instinct taking over. "Where does it lead?" "There's an exit that leads into an alley 3 blocks east," Sullivan replied. "It was part of the original escape route in case something went wrong with the plan. And now we're using their escape route against themselves," Scarlett observed wryly. The elevator gently stopped underground, and the doors opened onto a dimly lit hallway. The air was thick with the smell of mold and damp concrete. "This way," Sullivan indicated, limping towards a seemingly abandoned service door. As they moved through the darkness, Scarlett felt Mitchell approach her protectively. It was surreal, how in just a few hours their lives had become intertwined in such a profound and irreversible way. "When this is over," she whispered to him, "you're going to have to rethink your security policies." A small smile appeared on Mitchell's lips. "When this is over, you'll be guaranteed a spot in the company's legal department, if there's still a company. First, we need to survive this." "Liddy," Sullivan reminded him, his voice echoing softly through the dark tunnel that opened before them. The storm continued to rage outside, but down here in the bowels of Mitchell Technologies, a silent battle was about to reach its climax. And as they moved through the darkness, Scarlett realized that sometimes you have to go underground to finally emerge into the light of truth. The maintenance tunnel snaked beneath Mitchell Technologies like a forgotten artery of the city. The dim light from the emergency lamps created dancing shadows on the damp concrete walls as Scarlett, Mitchell, and Sullivan moved forward in calculated silence. "Stop," Sullivan whispered, suddenly bracing himself against the wall. His face was paler than before, the makeshift bandage already starting to show signs of blood. "I need to tell you something before it's too late." Mitchell approached the former head of security while Scarlett watched the hallway behind them. The device in his pocket seemed to pulse with the weight of the revelations it contained. 5 years ago, Sullivan began, his voice weak but determined. "That shooting wasn't an accident, Avery. It was a warning." "What are you talking about?" Mitchell frowned, remembering the day he almost lost his life during an attempted robbery that Sullivan had thwarted. "The organization that wants the Aurora project, they had their eye on you ever since. They knew you were developing something revolutionary." Sullivan paused to catch his breath. "I should have let you die that day. That was the original plan." Scarlett watched Mitchell's expression harden at the revelation. The complexity of the conspiracy began to unfold like a dark tangle of betrayals and lies. "Why did you save me?" Mitchell asked, his voice controlled. "Because at that moment I saw something in his eyes. The same determination that I saw in my son's eyes when he said he was going to beat the disease." Sullivan swallowed. "I couldn't do that. So they changed their strategy. They made me their shadow, watching, waiting." A distant clang of metal doors echoed through the tunnel, interrupting the confession. Scarlett quickly calculated the distance they still had to travel. "We have to keep going," she urged. "They're going underground." They resumed their journey faster now, with Mitchell assisting Sullivan. The sound of their footsteps was muffled by the storm that still raged above them, making the tunnel itself occasionally vibrate. "Lauren isn't just an assistant or a spy," Sullivan continued as they walked forward. "She is the daughter of Theodore Hayes, CEO of Hayes Defense Systems, the largest private military contractor in the country." Scarlett added, her corporate law classes coming back to mind. "They have been investigated several times for unethical practices in weapons development. And now they want neural recognition technology." Mitchell muttered, the pieces falling into place. "With Project Aurora, they could literally control soldiers with thoughts." "Not just soldiers," Sullivan corrected. "Anyone with the neural implant. That's why they needed it to look like a legitimate sale, not a steal, to get access to the original security protocols." They came to a fork in the tunnel. Sullivan led the way to the right, but before they could proceed, the sound of voices began to echo from both directions. "They cornered us," Scarlett whispered, her heart racing. Mitchell quickly scanned the room, his eyes settling on an old ventilation grate about 7 feet above the floor. "Over there. It's our only chance." Working together, they were able to remove the grate. Mitchell interlocked his fingers to form a handhold, propelling Scarlett first into the duct. She immediately turned to help Sullivan, who groaned in pain from the effort. "Go," Sullivan said as Mitchell prepared to climb. "I won't be able to continue, and I'll only slow them down." "We won't let you," Scarlett protested, but Sullivan was already moving away from the opening. "My son died because I trusted the wrong people," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't undo the past, but I can give you a chance to stop more lives from being destroyed." The voices got closer, and Mitchell realized he needed to make a decision. With one last look at his former friend, he accepted Scarlett's hand and hoisted himself into the ventilation shaft. "Sullivan," he called one last time, "I'm sorry about your son." A small smile appeared on the former security chief's lips. "Prove you were right to save your life that day, Avery. Don't let them win." Mitchell and Scarlett watched as Sullivan purposefully limped in the opposite direction, leaving a trail of blood drops that his pursuers were sure to follow. It was his last act of redemption. In the tight space of the duct, Scarlett felt Mitchell tremble slightly beside her. Not out of fear, he realized, but out of a mixture of anger and determination. "Let's finish them off," she whispered, her hand finding his in the darkness. "For Sullivan, for his son, for everyone they hurt." Mitchell squeezed his hand in response, and in that moment something changed between them. They were no longer just a CEO and a cleaning lady brought together by extraordinary circumstances. They were partners in a mission that went beyond their social or professional differences. The duct should lead to the cargo area, he whispered, starting to move. From there we can reach Thompson Street. As they silently advanced through the ventilation system, the sound of raised voices and hurried footsteps echoed below them. The night was not yet over, and the real battle for Mitchell Technologies and the future of Project Aurora was just beginning. The storm continued its relentless assault on Chicago. But inside those underground tunnels, a different storm was unfolding, one that threatened to change not only their lives, but the very future of humanity. The ventilation system was a metallic maze of decisions and consequences. Scarlett and Mitchell advanced in silence, each movement calculated to avoid any noise that might give away their position. Sullivan's sacrifice hung over them like a tangible shadow. "Wait," Scarlett whispered. Holding Mitchell's arm, I hear voices below. Through a ventilation grill they observed Lauren and Richard in a heated argument in the cargo hold. Sullivan was weak, Lauren said, her voice thick with contempt. "Always has been. My father was right about him from the beginning. The important thing is that Mitchell can't leave this building with that device," Richard replied, checking his phone. "Crews are already positioned at all exits within a 5-block radius." Mitchell felt Scarlett tense beside him. The device in his pocket seemed to pulse with a renewed urgency. "We need a new plan," she whispered. "They know exactly where to look." Mitchell studied the environment through the grid. The cargo hold was full of boxes and equipment, and an idea began to form in his mind. "The delivery trucks," he murmured. "Every Thursday morning we get office supplies. The trucks should be arriving in—" He checked his watch, 20 minutes. "How do you know that?" Scarlett asked, impressed by his knowledge of operational details. "I started as a delivery driver," he replied with a small smile. "I never forgot my roots." The sound of more people entering the warehouse interrupted their conversation. Through the fence they saw Theodore Hayes himself walk through the double doors, his impeccable suit contrasting with the industrial area. "Lauren, darling." Hayes greeted his daughter with calculated coolness. "Report. Mitchell and a woman are still in the building," Lauren responded promptly. "Sullivan is hurt, but—" "Sullivan is no longer relevant," Hayes cut in. "The device is our priority. With it we can replicate the project without needing approval from Mitchell or his board." Scarlett felt Mitchell stiffen beside her. The betrayal of people so close to him clearly affected him more than he let on. "If I may, Mr. Hayes," Richard interjected, "I suggest we focus on the cargo area. It's the only viable exit left." Hayes nodded, a predatory smile on his lips. "Excellent observation, Bennett. I always knew your talent went beyond financial spreadsheets." In the ventilation shaft, Scarlett and Mitchell exchanged meaningful glances. The truck's plan had just become much more complicated. "We need to create a distraction," Scarlett whispered, her legal mind already strategizing. "Something big enough to divide their attention." Mitchell scanned the warehouse again, his eyes settling on the fire control panel. "The sprinkler system," he murmured. "If we can activate it remotely." "The entire cargo area will be in chaos," Scarlett added, understanding his plan. "But how did we get there without being seen?" Mitchell began moving through the duct, guiding them down a path parallel to the warehouse. "There is a secondary control room on the mezzanine. It was used before the system was automated." As they moved, they could hear Hayes continuing to give orders below. His cold voice echoed through the metal, reminding them of what was at stake. "When this is over," Hayes was saying, "Mitchell Technologies will be just a subsidiary of Hayes Defense, and Project Aurora will revolutionize not just warfare, but the very concept of human control." Scarlett felt a shiver run down her spine. The device in his pocket wasn't just proof of corporate conspiracy. It was the key to preventing a dystopian future. Finally, they reached a railing that gave access to the mezzanine. Mitchell carefully removed it, and they both slid out of the ventilation system. "The control panel should still be functional," he whispered, moving into the shadows. "But we need to be quick." Scarlett followed him, her years of working different shifts giving her the ability to move silently. Below them, Hayes continued his monologue about power and control, unaware of their presence. "Here," Mitchell indicated an old panel covered in dust. We just need. The sound of footsteps on the metal stairs of the mezzanine made them freeze. Someone was going up. Scarlett, Mitchell whispered urgently. If something goes wrong. No, she interrupted him, her hand finding his in the dim light. We're going to get out of this together. The footsteps approached and time seemed to slow down. In that moment, suspended between danger and hope, Scarlett realized that their lives had become intertwined in a way that transcended their unlikely initial connection. The storm continued its violent symphony over Chicago, but inside Mitchell Technologies, a different storm was about to be unleashed, one that would change the course of their lives and possibly the future of humanity. The footsteps on the metal stairs to the mezzanine were getting closer every second. Scarlett and Mitchell hid behind a pile of old boxes, their bodies close enough to feel each other's breath. Richard Bennett emerged at the top of the stairs, his phone lighting the way. Lauren, I found something, he called down. There are fresh dust marks up here. Mitchell felt Scarlett squeeze his hand lightly, a silent gesture of shared determination. The fire control panel was only a few feet away, but reaching it now would mean certain exposure. Precise your words, Richard. Hayes's voice echoed from below. We don't have time for guesswork. Bennett came dangerously close to their hiding place, his light sweeping through the shadows. Someone was here recently, and considering Mitchell knows every inch of this building. He knows about the secondary. Control room, Lauren added, already heading up the stairs. Dad, we need to seal all the exits now. Scarlett watched Mitchell close his eyes briefly, a pained expression crossing his face as he heard his trusted former assistant's voice. She knew that each betrayal discovered was like a new wound opening. We have to act now, Scarlett whispered so low only Mitchell could hear, while Lauren is still on the stairs. Mitchell nodded, understanding the plan without the need for words. In one fluid movement, he slid out of hiding, keeping to the shadows as he approached Bennett from behind. Richard Mitchell called softly, making his former friend turn sharply. Why? Bennett almost dropped the phone, his eyes wide with surprise. Avery, you don't understand. They have my family. Liar. Mitchell replied, his voice thick with disappointment. You were always too ambitious to settle for a minority stake in the company. While Mitchell kept Bennett distracted, Scarlett moved silently toward the control panel. Lauren was almost at the top of the stairs, and Hayes was coordinating more men downstairs. What would you do in my place? Bennett argued, his voice shaking slightly. Hayes offered not just money, but real power. The kind of power that could change the world. Change the world through mind control. Mitchell stepped forward. It's not change, Richard. It's tyranny. Scarlett reached for the dashboard, her fingers dancing over the ancient controls. Years of working in maintenance had given him practical knowledge that was now proving invaluable. You've always been so idealistic, Avery, Lauren said finally, reaching the mezzanine. That's why we needed to push you away. You would never understand the true potential of the Aurora project. I completely understand, Mitchell replied, strategically positioning himself to keep the attention off Scarlett. I understand that some people confuse power with progress. Hayes appeared at the top of the stairs, his presence commanding immediate tension. Mr. Mitchell, what a pleasure to finally meet you. Now, where is the device? Right here. Mitchell took something out of his pocket, making everyone freeze. It was his Patek Philippe watch. Scarlett took advantage of the moment of distraction to activate the fire suppression system. The deafening sound of the alarm instantly filled the room, and water began to gush from the sprinklers. Chaos ensued immediately. Hayes shouted orders as his men slipped on the now wet warehouse floor. Lauren tried to reach Mitchell but slipped, being supported by Bennett. Now! Mitchell shouted, pulling Scarlett toward a side door she hadn't noticed before. They ran down the narrow hallway, the sound of pursuers echoing behind them. The water from the sprinklers had created a perfect curtain of confusion for their escape. The real device? Scarlett asked as they ran. Safe with you, Mitchell replied, a small smile tugging at his lips. I knew they would expect you to be with me. The hallway took them to a secondary loading area, smaller and older than the main one. A delivery truck was parked there, its engine running. How did you? Scarlett began to ask. Some of the old drivers are still loyal, Mitchell quickly explained. Not everyone has a price. They could hear Hayes shouting orders getting closer and closer. Time was running out. Scarlett. Mitchell stopped briefly, holding her arms. If something happened? No, she interrupted him, her eyes shining with determination. We started this together, we'll finish it together. For a moment the world seemed to slow down. The water ran down their faces, mixing with the tension and adrenaline of the moment. Mitchell leaned in slightly as if he was going to kiss her. But the sound of doors being violently opened brought them back to reality. Come on, he whispered, guiding her to the truck. As they hid among the boxes in the trailer, Scarlett realized that her life had changed irrevocably in the last few hours. The device in her pocket, the revelations about the Aurora project, and most importantly, the man at her side. Everything conspired to transform a simple night at work into a decisive moment in her existence. The truck began to move, and through a small gap they saw Hayes and his men emerging into the loading area, too late to stop them. The storm continued to batter Chicago, but now hidden among boxes of paper and office supplies, Scarlett and Mitchell had a chance to expose the truth. And maybe, just maybe, a chance to explore the feelings that had been born at the most unlikely times of their lives. The truck snaked through the wet streets of Chicago, each turn making the boxes of supplies sway around Scarlett and Mitchell. The storm continued relentlessly, turning the city lights into diffuse blurs through the small opening through which they watched. We need to contact Prosecutor Winters, Mitchell whispered, checking his water-damaged phone. But all our devices are unusable. Scarlett adjusted her position between the boxes, feeling the device still secure in her pocket. I know someone who can help us. My roommate Rachel works at the DA's office as a paralegal. Are you sure we can trust her? With my life, Scarlett replied without hesitation. She helped me through my dad's entire process, plus she lives just a few blocks away. The truck made a sharp turn, throwing them against the boxes. Mitchell instinctively wrapped his arms around Scarlett, shielding her from the impact. The close contact made them both freeze for a moment, their breathing synchronized in the confined space. Sorry, he muttered, but didn't pull away. No need to apologize, she replied softly, allowing herself to remain in the protective embrace for a few more seconds. A sound of sirens interrupted the moment. Several vehicles passed at a high rate of speed in the opposite direction, likely responding to the alarm at Mitchell Technologies. Hayes must have called the police, Mitchell commented, finally stepping back to peer through the crack. But knowing him, he probably reported a common robbery, nothing about Project Aurora. He can't risk exposing the true nature of the project, Scarlett agreed. Public opinion would destroy both Hayes' defense and Mitchell Technologies if they knew about mind control technology. The truck began to slow down, and they heard the driver knock 3 times on the wall that separated the cab from the body, the agreed signal. That's our cue, Mitchell said, preparing to leave. Where exactly does your friend live? Lakewood, building 3 blocks east of here, apartment 507. They waited for the truck to come to a complete stop in a dark alley before cautiously emerging. The driver, an older man with graying hair, waved briefly before driving away, keeping his promise of discretion. The rain hit them immediately, but after the Mitchell Technologies sprinklers, they were beyond caring about more water. They moved quickly through the side streets, avoiding the main avenues where security cameras could betray them. How did you get his loyalty? Scarlett asked as they walked, referring to the driver. Jerry was one of the company's first employees, Mitchell explained. When his wife got sick a few years ago, we made sure she got the best care possible. Not because it was company policy, but because it was the right thing to do. Scarlett watched him with a new look of admiration. You're not really the tyrant CEO everyone thinks you are you? Maybe I got a little lost along the way, he admitted, his voice soft. Sometimes we need a reminder of what really matters. A familiar car slowly passed them, making them retreat into the shadows of a service entrance. Mitchell pressed Scarlett against the wall, their bodies close together, as they waited for the vehicle to pass. Lauren, he whispered, recognizing his former assistant behind the wheel. Scarlett could feel Mitchell's heart pounding against her chest, a mix of adrenaline and something deeper that neither of them were ready to name. When the danger passed, they resumed their journey more cautious now. The Lakewood building loomed. Ahead, its Art Deco facade partially lit by the occasional flash of lightning. "How are we going to get in?" Mitchell asked, noticing the security system in the lobby. Scarlett smiled, pulling a key card from her pocket. "Rachel gave me a copy. For emergencies." Although she probably didn't imagine this kind of emergency. They entered the lobby silently, thankful that the doorman was busy watching TV at his post. The elevator seemed too risky an option after the night's events, so they opted for the stairs. 5 floors, Scarlett commented as they began to climb. Nothing compared to 60 from Mitchell Technologies. Mitchell chuckled softly, the sound surprisingly comforting after so much tension. "You know what's ironic? I've spent years building a corporate empire, but I've never felt more alive than I have in the last few hours. Running away from corporate assassins with a cleaning lady," she teased. But there was truth in her words, discovering that sometimes we find clarity in the most unlikely of places. He corrected softly, his gaze meeting hers in the dim light of the staircase. They reached the 5th floor without incident. But as they approached apartment 507, they noticed the door was ajar. "Rachel never leaves the door unlocked," Scarlett whispered, her body tensing. Mitchell grabbed her arm before she could move forward. "It could be a trap. Hayes has the resources to uncover his connections. But if Rachel is in danger..." A sound from the apartment interrupted their argument. Someone was moving inside, and time for decisions was running out. Mitchell and Scarlett positioned themselves on opposite sides of the ajar door to apartment 507, adrenaline pumping through their veins. Years of martial arts training made Mitchell quickly assess the situation, while Scarlett's experience in difficult situations sharpened his senses. 3 people, she whispered, interpreting the different patterns of footsteps coming from inside. "One has a slight limp." "Sullivan." Mitchell questioned his mind, processing the possibilities. Before they could come up with a plan, Rachel's voice cut through the silence. "Scarlett, is that you?" The relief in her friend's voice was genuine, but Scarlett remained wary. "Rachel, are you okay?" "She's safe," a new voice replied, strong, feminine, and authoritative. "I'm District Attorney Alexandra Winters, and yes, Marcus Sullivan is here too." Mitchell and Scarlett exchanged surprised looks before cautiously entering the apartment. Sullivan was sitting on the couch, his wound adequately treated, while a middle-aged woman with graying hair and a military bearing watched them intently. Rachel, a young woman with Asian features, ran to hug Scarlett. "How did you find us?" Mitchell asked the prosecutor, maintaining a calculated distance. "Sullivan contacted us as soon as you escaped through the tunnel," Winters explained. "He made it to my office before Hayes realized he had switched sides. Rachel here." She gestured to the legal assistant. "Mentioned that this would be the first place you would look for help, Scarlett." "The device," Sullivan asked, his voice stronger than a few hours ago. Scarlett took it out of her pocket, still protected by the water. "Is the whole Hayes defense scheme here?" "And much more," Mitchell confirmed, "including the true plans for Project Aurora. It's not just about mind control. It's about complete reprogramming of human consciousness." Winters took the device with reverential care. "This explains the involvement of certain government agencies that we detected in our investigation. Hayes was not just selling to private military organizations. He was creating a global market for population control." Rachel added, her years of working on national security cases evident in her analysis. "Imagine authoritarian governments with access to this technology." A noise in the hallway made everyone freeze. Mitchell instinctively moved to protect Scarlett, while Winters pulled out a gun that no one had noticed until then. "Back door," Rachel whispered, indicating the emergency exit through the kitchen. "Leads to the fire escape." "You guys need to go," Winters ordered, handing a secure phone to Mitchell. "I have a team stationed at the Riverside Hotel, room 815. Find Agent Martinez." "What about you?" Scarlett protested, reluctant to leave Rachel in danger. "I'm a federal prosecutor with decades of experience." Winters smiled confidently. "And I have backup arriving. Your part now is to keep Mitchell alive until we can formally prosecute Hayes and his accomplices." Sullivan scrambled to his feet. "I'm going with you. I know Hayes's protocols. I can help you avoid them. The sound of footsteps in the hallway grew closer. Rachel quickly got her keys and a backpack ready. There's dry clothes and money here. I knew at some point that would be needed. You're amazing. Scarlett hugged her friend quickly. Just keep your promise to be my maid of honor. Rachel winked, trying to ease the tension of the moment. Mitchell guided Scarlett and Sullivan to the back exit while Winters and Rachel strategically positioned themselves in the apartment. The rain continued to fall, now softer, as if nature itself was conspiring to give them cover. The Riverside Hotel is 20 minutes away, Sullivan informed them as they descended the fire escape. But Hayes will have men monitoring the main routes. Then we won't use the main routes. Mitchell decided, his business mind quickly adapting to strategic survival thinking. The old subway tunnel system runs underneath this area. How do you know that? Scarlett asked, impressed once again by her knowledge of the city. Part of the due diligence when we purchased the land from Mitchell Technologies, he explained. I've always liked knowing the history behind places. They reached the alley at the back of the building, the early morning shadows offering additional cover. Sullivan identified an entrance to the subway maintenance system, partially hidden by trash containers. Hayes would never consider this route, he commented as Mitchell pried open the ancient lock. He always thinks too big to notice the smaller details. Like you, Scarlett teased softly, making Sullivan smile for the first time since meeting him. Like the rest of us, he replied. Sometimes we get so focused on the bigger picture that we miss the little truths right in front of us. Mitchell managed to open the door, revealing a staircase leading down into the darkness. He grabbed Rachel's backpack, finding flashlights among the supplies. Ready for another underground adventure? He asked Scarlett, extending his hand. She accepted it without hesitation, realizing how natural the gesture felt now. With you, always. Sullivan watched the interaction with veiled interest, noting how the last few hours had transformed the dynamic between the CEO and the cleaning lady into something deep and genuine. As they descended into the darkness of the abandoned tunnels, carrying with them not only evidence of a conspiracy, but also the weight of newfound truths about themselves, the city above them began to awaken to a new day, a day that promised to reveal even more secrets and perhaps a future far different than any of them had imagined. The abandoned Chicago subway tunnels formed an underground labyrinth of forgotten stories and buried secrets. Mitchell guided the group through the dark corridors, his flashlight revealing old graffiti and abandoned equipment that told the story of a city in constant transformation. Access to the Riverside Hotel should be this way, he indicated, consulting his memory of the city's ancient blueprints. There is a maintenance exit that will take us 2 blocks from the hotel. Sullivan, still weak but determined, limped a few steps behind them. Hayes will expect us to use conventional transportation, taxis, Uber, even stolen cars. But this, he gestured toward the tunnels, this is brilliant in its simplicity. Scarlett watched as Mitchell occasionally slowed down to check on Sullivan, the same man who hours earlier had plotted against him. It was further proof of the character she had discovered beneath the ruthless CEO's facade. How did you actually start Mitchell Technologies? She asked, taking advantage of a moment when they stopped for Sullivan to rest. The real version, not the one in the newspapers. Mitchell leaned back against the damp wall of the tunnel, a small, nostalgic smile on his lips. It was in a garage, as they say, but it wasn't mine. It was Richard's father's, ironically. Mr. Bennett let us use the space on the weekends while we tried to develop our first pattern recognition program. The precursor to Project Aurora, Sullivan commented, massaging his injured shoulder. Exactly. At the time, we just wanted to create something that would help people with motor disabilities communicate better. Mitchell continued, his voice softening with the memory. Richard handled the finances, I handled the programming. We were just 2 kids with a dream of making a difference. What changed? Scarlett asked softly. Success, he replied after a pause. With it came investors' expectations, pressures. Little by little, the original mission was lost amid financial reports and quarterly goals. A distant noise made them freeze. Sullivan immediately went into defensive mode, years of security training evident in his stance. Rats. He relaxed. After a few seconds, But we can't stay still for long. Hayes must be expanding the search perimeter. They resumed their journey, now more cautious. Scarlett noticed how Mitchell unconsciously positioned himself between her and any suspicious sounds, a protective gesture that warmed her heart in unexpected ways. When this is over, she began choosing her words carefully. What happens to Mitchell Technologies? Assuming we survive, he joked, but there was seriousness in his eyes. I'm going to rebuild it. Not like it was before, but like it should have been from the beginning. Technology that actually helps people, not controls them. It's going to need a strong legal department, she commented casually, making him smile. And from a deputy CEO with experience in seeing beyond appearances, he replied, his gaze meeting hers in the dim light. Sullivan cleared his throat behind them. I hate to interrupt the moment, but we have company. Lantern lights danced on. The distant walls of the tunnel accompanied by muffled voices. Hayes had considered the tunnels after all. This way, Mitchell whispered, pulling them into a side hallway partially blocked by debris. There's an old maintenance chamber. We can hide until they pass. The chamber was cramped, forcing them to stay close together. Scarlett could feel Mitchell's heart pounding against her back as Sullivan crouched near the entrance monitoring the pursuers. 6 men, Sullivan reported in a barely audible whisper. Professionals, probably ex-military hired by Hayes' defense. Mitchell felt Scarlett tense against him. Instinctively, he wrapped an arm around her waist, a gesture both protective and comforting. Trust me, he whispered in your ear, his hot breath sending goosebumps down the back of your neck. Always, she replied, surprising herself with the absolute truth of that word. The minutes dragged by as lights and voices passed through their hiding place. Sullivan remained as still as a statue, years of training, evident in his ability to control even his breathing. When the danger finally passed, they cautiously emerged. The tunnel was silent again, but the tension in the air was palpable. We'll be back, Sullivan warned. Hayes is not a man to give up easily. Then we can't waste time, Mitchell decided, consulting the secure phone Winters had given him. Agent Martinez is waiting. With him we can finally expose the whole truth. Scarlett realized there was more to his tone than just determination. There was hope. Hope for redemption, for a fresh start, for a future different from what any of them had imagined when the night began. Let's do this together, she said, intertwining her fingers with his. Mitchell squeezed her hand in response, and in that simple gesture was a silent promise of protection, of trust, of something deeper they didn't yet dare name. The tunnels stretched out before them like an underground river of possibilities. Somewhere above, the sun was beginning to rise over Chicago, promising a new day. But first they needed to emerge from the shadows, carrying with them not only the evidence of a conspiracy, but also the seeds of a transformation that transcended corporate codes and social divides. Sullivan watched their interaction with a knowing smile. Maybe he thought sometimes you have to lose everything to find your way back to the truth. And sometimes that path takes us through dark tunnels, only to show us the light that has always been there, waiting to be discovered. The Riverside Hotel emerged in the early hours of the morning like a beacon of hope in the Chicago cityscape. Mitchell, Scarlett, and Sullivan emerged from the tunnels through a discreet maintenance exit, their clothes still damp from the rain that had now eased to a gentle drizzle. 8th floor, Mitchell muttered, checking his secure phone. Agent Martinez is waiting for us. Hayes will have men guarding the lobby. Sullivan warned, his injury making his breathing heavier. And the security cameras. They won't be a problem. Scarlett interrupted, a small smile appearing on her lips. Rachel didn't just put clothes and money in her backpack. She removed 3 hotel employee badges which were perfectly forged. Mitchell stared at her with renewed admiration, realizing once again how he had underestimated the woman he had met as a cleaning lady just a few hours ago. Your friend thinks of everything, he commented, adjusting the badge on his still-wet uniform. She learned to always be prepared after what happened to my father, Scarlett replied softly. Sometimes the only difference between justice and injustice is being one step ahead. They entered through the service entrance, naturally mingling. with the morning shift employees. Sullivan had a more pronounced limp now, but he managed to maintain the composure of someone finishing a long night shift. The service elevator took them to the 8th floor without incident, but when the doors opened, they found Lauren Peterson standing in the hallway, a discreet gun pointed in her direction. "You guys are too predictable," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of triumph and disappointment. Prosecutor Winters seriously Avery. As if we didn't know about her government contacts. Mitchell instinctively stepped in front of Scarlett, but she surprised him by taking a step forward. "Actually," Scarlett said calmly, "we were counting on it." Before Lauren could react, 2 doors opened simultaneously in the hallway. From the first prosecutor, Winters emerged with a tactical team. From the second, the real Agent Martinez, his gun already pointed at Lauren. "Lauren Peterson," Winters stated formally, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, industrial espionage, and attempted murder." Lauren dropped the gun, a bitter smile on her lips. "You don't understand, Avery. What Hayes is trying to do is bigger than all of us. Controlling minds is not progress, Lauren." Mitchell replied, his voice soft but firm. "It's tyranny, and you know it." As the tactical team led Lauren away, Winters approached the group. "Hayes was detained 10 minutes ago at his mansion. Richard Bennett is cooperating, offering evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence." "Classic Richard." Mitchell murmured, a hint of sadness in his voice at his former friend's betrayal. "The device?" Martinez asked, holding out his hand. Scarlett handed it over, feeling like she was passing along not just evidence, but also the weight of all the revelations of the past few hours. "Project Aurora will be dismantled," Winters assured. "Technology will be repurposed for its original purpose, helping people with disabilities, not controlling them." Sullivan let out a deep sigh, as if years of guilt were finally leaving him. "My son would have been proud of that." "He is," Scarlett assured, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Wherever you are." The next few hours were a whirlwind of testimony, documentation, and legal proceedings. The sun was already high in the sky when they were finally released, the adrenaline of the night giving way to a deep but satisfied tiredness. "I need to rebuild my company," Mitchell commented as they watched Chicago awaken from one of the hotel's balconies. "Start from scratch with the right principles this time." "Not from scratch," Scarlett corrected, turning to face him. "You have a solid foundation, people like Jerry who remain loyal not out of fear or money, but because they believe in what is right." Mitchell studied her for a moment, marveling at her ability to see beyond appearances, to find hope in even the darkest situations. "You know," he said, taking a step toward her, "I still need that deputy CEO I mentioned. Someone who understands both the law and seeing the truth in people." "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Mitchell?" She teased, a smile playing on her lips. "I'm offering a partnership," he replied, his hand finding hers. "In every way." The morning sun bathed Chicago in golden hues, as if the city itself was celebrating the triumph of truth over greed, of good over manipulation. Sullivan watched them discreetly from the porch entrance, a knowing smile on his tired face. "Mitchell Technologies will be rebuilt," he commented, but this time with a much stronger foundation. Scarlett and Mitchell turned to him, their hands still intertwined. "With the right people," Mitchell agreed, his gaze returning to Scarlett. "Anything is possible." The city continued its awakening beneath them, unaware of the drama that had unfolded within its depths during the night. But for those who lived every moment, the CEO who rediscovered his humanity, the cleaning lady who proved her worth beyond appearances, and the man who found redemption through sacrifice, the world would never be the same. And as the sun rose above the Chicago skyline, promising a new day and a new beginning, Scarlett and Mitchell shared their first real kiss. No longer separated by titles or social standing, but united by something much deeper. The truth they found in each other during the most extraordinary night of their lives. It was a dawn of changes, new beginnings, and silent promises. Mitchell Technologies would rise from the ashes of its own corruption, but this time guided not just by technological innovation, but by the human compassion that its CEO had rediscovered in the arms of an unlikely heroine.